Hi, it's really nice to meet you. I'm Keely. Can you let me know your preferred name and pronouns?
Laura, she, her.
Okay, cool. Yeah, just like to make sure we're all on the same page before starting. So, can you tell me a little bit about what brings you in today?
Uh, just trying to find a balance in my everyday life. Seems like things are a little chaotic.
hmm So, can you tell me a little bit about like what exactly is chaotic and what you think what sort of might be out of balance?
So I've been in school for a long time and I've always been able to kind of manage and juggle my personal life, my professional life, and my education. But right now, things just seem like they're spiraling in every direction.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah, it sounds like you have a lot going on as well, a lot of responsibilities and a lot to manage. So what are you in school for?
Social work,
Are you getting your master's or bachelor's or
my master's.
okay, awesome. So it sounds you've definitely been in school before and everything. Um, so when exactly did you start feeling like things were, more chaotic and out of balance?
Probably last January is when things got like super crazy.
hmm Did anything happen like around that time that you think may have caused that shift, or is it just like a buildup of things?
Probably a buildup of things. There was like several things that happened all at once.
hmm
So like in January, um, at work, we had a new counselor start at the same time as two others had quit. So we went from being one counselor short to then two counselors short. And the new one was changing fields. So she had a lot to learn. So essentially, I went from having two people who managed a caseload to, and myself, to all of our patients, me being responsible for it. So that was a lot, while trying to train somebody who was new to the field. Um, and then also at the same time, like we had been working to build a house and things had been really slow until that point. But like February of last year, things started to move really fast. So it went from like a year and a half of, yeah, we're building a house. Yeah, we're building a house to, oh crap, we're building a house. So it was just kind of like sped up and super speed because work was chaos, which, that's normal and when you work in human services. But it was, I didn't have anybody for support there. And then on top of it, we're getting prepared to move and it's happening way faster than I thought it would happen.
Yeah, that is hard and a lot. And I know working in human services, especially when there's a lot going on and there's always a lot going on, but when there's just that little bit more that's going on, it can be especially difficult and just managing things in all of those domains, like training someone and also there being, an additional clinician shortage and having to deal with everything in your house and building a house, just switching between all of that and managing all of that. I'm sure that is
Yeah, and
really
in,
difficult.
in 6 months, I went from being the baby clinician, like the one with the least amount of experience, to the only one. So it was like I went from this great support and having clinicians with years of experience to turn to I I was the one with the knowledge. And that was overwhelming and scary.
Do you feel like has there been anything that's been helpful in terms of you transitioning into this role of like more leadership?
Um, I'm an amazing boss. And sometimes I don't have the confidence in myself. But like when I turn to her for support, while she's no longer like when I started as an intern and she was the clinician I actually followed. So like I know that she has the clinical background, but right now she wears a different hat. But she gives lots of positive reinforcement, especially on those days where I'm just like, man, what am I doing? Because sometimes I feel like I have what is it? Like imposter syndrome, like where you just feel like I'm not really that adult, but I am.
No, that's completely understandable, especially when like you really quickly transition again, like you said, from being the baby therapist to being like now everyone comes to you. And it's like, when did this happen? There's usually, yeah, like an adult around, basically. And especially in um human services and also just, being a woman in general, it's easy to be like, I should be able to be on top of everything without problems. And so when you are experiencing, that stress and overwhelm, just sort of internalizing it is really understandable, even when you do have, like a great support like your boss, because you can be great at your job and not be able to be great at three jobs at once, or able to do everything, or like be superhuman, basically. You mentioned also that there was something going on, like transitions and stuff with your family. Were you just mostly talking about the building a house, or is there anything else that's been sort of transitioning there?
Well, right around then, my middle son actually was transitioning out of like a teenage group home into an adult group home. And like he had just qualified just barely for a DD waiver. And so, like, that there was relief around that time because, yeah, he did find a adult group home and he did qualify for the waiver. But that was with a realistic understanding that, like, when he took the VIRES assessment as an adult, he wasn't going to qualify. Like, he qualified because he was able to take that assessment as a child. And that assessment, like, has more flexibility for minors than it does for adults. So like the his case manager through the DD waiver was really honest with us, and she told us she was like, yeah, he kind of just passed by the skin of his teeth to get the waiver, but when he has to retake this assessment, he likely won't have it, and that was part of his housing. Like he qualified for his current group home because of the waiver. So like in January, everything was kind of great because he was taken care of. He was, I knew that I had almost a year of him being in a stable environment. Um, but then like reality started to hit probably in August, and like his case manager, because he's an adult now, and I didn't want to like overstep with him and take there's a word. I didn't want to be responsible for decision making on his behalf. Like he, even with his autism diagnosis, like he's more than capable of making decisions. Are they great? No. What teenager do you know that makes good decisions? But he is absolutely capable of making decisions for himself. So, like January, we lost the counselors. I was starting a new semester, finding out that, the move process is like really rolling. By May, we were moving. Um, Work had kind of calmed down a little bit because the clinician I'd been training, like she was feeling really confident and she was able to take on a caseload. So that was pretty great. Um, July was chaos because I ended up having to work remotely for essentially 2 weeks. And I hate working remotely. I'd much rather be in my office with a client across from me. I don't like having to do phone sessions with him because I don't know, it doesn't work as well for me. But so that was hard because I really felt disconnected and like there like my sense of purpose was a little swayed from I'm used to. So then when I got back at the end of July and I was really back full time and able to get things kind of back in order, that was just like a rat race. And then it hit me that I needed to figure out this housing for my son because I knew that, come December he would be homeless again. And unfortunately, due to the circumstances why he's in the group home, like he can't live in our home. It's a safety concern. So um his goal is ultimately to live by himself. So like I had been trying to get a hold of his case manager and like she wasn't calling me back. So I was like, well, maybe he like made me not a person she could talk to anymore. Maybe he revoked his ROI. So like I called him and I was like, hey, so like how involved do you want me? Do you want me to try to like work at this? Like, is there now a barrier? Like, just let me know. And he's like, no, mom, like I definitely want you to help out. And I was like, okay. So I finally got in touch with her in like September and we had hired, oh, I forgot. We had actually hired two clinicians in July. One of them was a brand new baby clinician. So right back to where I'd started with the other one who needed a lot more help. And then the other one, she's seasoned, but she never worked in this part of substance abuse. So that was a new transition for her. So that was kind of overwhelming, but we finally got things kind of worked out in September. Um, and unfortunately, like I suspected, my son ended up not qualifying for the waivers. So trying to figure out housing when there's not a lot of housing available.
Well, that is just an absolutely overwhelming amount to deal with. So first, I just want to say that I am truly sorry that you have all that, especially just with your son. Not that, you know, your son is because obviously you love your son. I can tell that you love your son, but just helping your son in the system that exists is incredibly hard and just not something, there's so much help that I can tell that you want to give him and you're just navigating it and dealing with the circumstances the best that you can, but it's just there are some things that yeah, you just can't change all the policies and laws and availability of housing that you wish you could. There's only so much that you can do, and you can't bring him into your home and just feeling like that sense of that you're doing everything you can and there's still obstacles is it can really take a toll. So I definitely get that. And then just all of the change that you've been experiencing in all of these different roles, like going into, a more leadership role like at work and then also sort of trying to navigate your role with your son in terms of how much like you were talking about how much sort of control and direction that you should be giving and where you should just be giving support and assistance and navigating all of that because he's an adult but you're his parent and you are providing support. So just seeing where you fit in and kind of all of these things and being more in charge in some places and less in charge in others when before it was different, that is so much change in such a short amount of time. And so I can understand completely why you're feeling off balance with all of that to deal with. Do you have like at home, what is your sort of family or friend, like what does your support system personally look like?
So when we moved, my husband and I actually ended up building a house about 40 minutes away from my parents, which has changed our dynamic. So, like, I don't have, like, my parents aren't like able to come and see me as often or spend time with the kids as often. So that's a little different. But like, my husband's a great support, but he just took a new job. And for the first time since we've been married, like, this job, he's gone. So he's usually going. He leaves Monday morning and isn't back until Friday. So that's been a huge adjustment to kind of be a single parent and like I still have my other responsibilities. So that's definitely new. Like it's funny on the evenings that I have class, like I usually am quick to pull on my husband for support with the littles. And so navigating how to kind of handle that now with it just being me has been different. Like he's still able to support me and like I still have a phone. So like I still have an amazing support system in that way, but maybe not as much time for me to get other things taken care of that I need to get
Hmm. So with your husband starting this new job, what are I know you're talking about supporting you with class and everything. Is there what else has now been sort of added to your plate that previously might have been his responsibility?
So for years, my work starts at 5 a.m. So I don't have to get in kids up. I'm out of the house by 4:30. And with him not being here, like I've had to change my work schedule. So like I'm working remote for the first 2 hours of my day. And while, in between sessions, I'm kind of like running around trying to get my kids up, get them going and get them moving. And that's different. Um, it it's different to not have like the help with just running through the evening necessities. Like, there's nobody to help with dinner or arguing with the little one to get her into a bath or getting ready for bed. Like that just falls on me. So that's a little different because um in the past we've been able to kind of juggle. Like I start the argument with her and then I'm able to go to bed because I have to be up at 4. So like I'll get her started for bed and then he finishes it off usually. Like there's a little more give and take where now I'm definitely like I'm it's just such a big transition to be doing it all on my own. And it gives me a new perspective because I think for years I was like, dang, this man comes home and sits on the couch. And I'm running around here getting everything ready. But maybe a little more appreciation than I might have had in the past for what he definitely brings when he's home.
No, that's really I'm glad that you're able to sort of have that appreciation and gratitude. Um, just because obviously, I mean, appreciating your partner for what they do is important, but also just because it's nice to be able to see sort of a break in the clouds from again, like the silver lining with everything else that's going on and things that might not be going as you want them to. It's like you have this stable, supportive partner, even if they're not there as often as you'd like. And I know you mentioned that you don't like doing, like Zoom sessions, you don't like interacting with clients that way. So having to do that for the first couple hours of your day and then transition into, helping with kids and everything and then transition back. That is a lot of change. And it's also not change that necessarily seems like it's suited to, how you work best and how you're happiest working. So it's also important to recognize as like a stressor as just it's not that it's just change because it seems like, building a house, that's like a positive change. That's growth and everything. And obviously your husband taking a new job, that can be a similar thing, but you're also making these sacrifices and changes that are just sacrifices as opposed to just changes for, your personal growth. So, how do you think that your children can you tell me just a little bit more about your children and how they're maybe adapting to or struggling with the changes that have been happening recently?
Um, so my kids that are at home, one is 15. Um, he's of course just going through that phase where everything's questioned and he knows it all. So that can be challenging because he definitely rebuttals with me a lot more than now than he used to. So that's a huge change because he's definitely a mama's boy. He talks a lot of crap, but he and I really have a great bond. Um, so it's definitely a huge transition for me for him to be more argumentative and less interested in just like he used to be able to like focus on a goal and we would get it taken care of. Now we're gonna get it taken care of, but we're gonna argue about it for a while. I'm like, geez, do you not get tired of this? And then my little, well, she's the baby of four and she's the only girl. So she's a lot of person. um, she's definitely like she's a very high needs child. Like she's not very independent when she plays like she used to be when she was little, but kind of like as my boys started to move out, it was like she became more needy than she had before. So that's definitely a change. She's usually the first to refuse to do something, so that can be challenging. She's a little resistant. She's my wild child.
Well, that's also just, I mean, obviously kids are kids are great. You gotta love them. But yeah, having a teenager and then your younger child who's sort of trying to fill that attention gap from her, brothers and there being less people in the household to just now you're going to be mom's going to be the source of all of the attention and I'm going to ask mom for more things. It's like everything, every part of your family and life is just yeah, changing all at once and all of your roles are again just shifting like all at the same time. So do you feel like um, so I know this is like stressful and overwhelming, but do you feel like this is a manageable like amount of stress and overwhelm that you're feeling? Like, do you feel like it's just going to be stressful for now and we're going to work through it, or are you concerned about your stress levels? Like how sustainable do you feel this is?
I keep trying to tell myself like, okay, in February, I became the only clinician for essentially 200 patients. Like, yeah, I had support, but essentially I was the clinician for 200 patients. So, like, okay, if I could make it through that, well, then I should be fine now. And I was doing it while I was going to school. But, like, May, moving and still being the primary person for like decision making, like, I feel like, okay, managed it then. I'm not sure what changed, like, from then to now. Like, I feel like I'm constantly chasing my own tail with school. Feel like, I can't even take a day off because I end up having to play catch up and or I have to, bust my butt 10 times harder to make sure that everything's in compliance before I take a day off. Or that I've, gotten all these things done. And I feel like in a lot of ways, like I I feel like I'm just largely running after myself
Mhm.
and constantly playing catch up and trying to get things in order. I'm like, why does everything seem to stay in chaos?
So I know most of the things that you mentioned that are stressful are things that you can't necessarily change or do anything about. Is there anything that you feel is overwhelming you that you maybe could have some control over or take a step back from, or is that not really a possibility?
Well, that's my issue is I feel like So like I can't not do my school because then I don't want to put it off any longer. Like I already feel like I put off going to school for so long, and I've done really well with staying in school. So like I don't want to like I already stepped back, and like when I went back for my master's, I my husband asked me to, only go at part time. So that's huge for me because up until like I'd been in full time school for the last 4 years. So to take it back to just being part time is huge. But so like that's kind of dragging on me because like if I'd have just done it full time, like I'd be almost done. So, but no, like I don't want to not do school. And obviously my kids like to eat, so I have to work.
Yeah.
But so like the things that I think that had me like the most frustrated is this seems like I, was able to manage and handle all the stress that like, yeah, there's a little bit more, it's a little different, but I don't know what shifted that it seems like I'm not able to kind of just manage all the chaos in my like our we have 4 kids. My husband and I have both been working full time. Of course there's been chaos, but I don't know like why now it seems like in comparison to previously like that I'm struggling to manage this chaos.
Mhm. Yeah, so I don't know if you're like a metaphor person, but like you worked with me for a second. So just think about it like you're carrying like a rock, like a really big rock. It's like a 50-pound rock. You're just holding it and you just got to do it for like 5 minutes. And so maybe you can do that, but the longer you hold that rock, the heavier it's going to feel, even though it's the same rock, it's the same stuff you've been dealing with before, but it's not, you're not physically going to be able to hold it forever, and it's just going to continue to feel like more and more. So that is completely the, and also because you've been using your resources for so long that it completely makes sense that they're feeling like overtaxed right now, because if your brain needs to operate at 110% for like a couple days or a couple weeks or a couple months in a very stressful time, it can do that, but that isn't something that is sustainable. So it is completely, with everything that you're dealing with, I am honestly amazed that you've been able to juggle it without feeling incredibly overwhelmed this entire time, because it's truly just more than one person can reasonably be expected to handle. Like, and I know that you still do have to handle it, so definitely acknowledge that. It's not like, again, your kids need to eat, and I fully agree with your reasons for prioritizing school, because it's something that you're doing for yourself and your future and your career. And yeah, you have put it off and you already made that compromise by agreeing to do it part-time. So I would never want you to stop doing that, because I feel like it probably is something that fuels you in a way, and that like gives you that motivation to keep going and helps you again with your work as a clinician, which is obviously something that you're very passionate about and care about, and that's something that helps you keep going. But yeah, there is no way the human body and brain would not be overwhelmed by this after, especially after an extended period of time. You're just living with chronic stress. So I'm just gonna ask you to rate really quick on a scale from 1 to 10, with 10 being the worst and like most stressful, and 0 being least stressful, or just 10 being most and 0 being least. So how stressed on average have you felt um with just general like everyday stressors like in the past month, on a scale from I guess 0 to 10?
Probably like an 8.
Mhm. And so again, on a scale from 0 to 10, Um, how often have you felt that you were able to control irritation like in your life?
So I think that's like the turning point for me for this week is I actually had like a crazy mom moment the other day trying to get ready for school. And it was silly. Like because in the mornings I like to make sure that like we get the house ready to be able to come home. So like if there's any dishes, I like for them to just be taken care of. And so like as we're getting ready to walk out the door, I realize like there's dirty clothes and I don't know like why, but like I'm gonna think about that the whole day. There's dirty clothes on my daughter's floor. And I'm gonna think about it. It's gonna drive me a little crazy. So like I lost it and that's not normal. So like that was the only time that happened. So but like it's not rational. Like it seems so ridiculous now. But in that moment, like I was just so frustrated.
Hmm. No, it's just again with being in a state of chronic stress like you are, it's like you can't, differentiating the rational and the irrational, it's just not really going to work because you're just, if you're living at, yeah, like an eight, like you said, just day to day, if you're living at an eight and a nine is what makes, the average person or most people just completely break and snap, it's just going to take you that little bit to get to that point. And your cognitive load is already so high with everything that you have to do and manage and transition between. Just the littlest things are going to like throw you out of orbit or just feel like they're throwing you out of orbit. Like you said, like you always feel like you're playing catch up, like with yourself. It's just because there's 110 things to fit in your brain and your brain only has room for 100. So there's always something to be anxious about. So I just feel like I really want you to know that you are dealing with an immense and not sustainable amount of stressors and that isn't, you know, your reactions and feelings to that are completely valid and not on you. It's just on, the fallibility of being a person. That's just kind of how it's going to work. And so I definitely want one of our goals to be examining um everything that's going on with you, everything that you're in charge of, and just figuring out a way to even little things just transition some of that stuff because this is just not manageable. Um, because I feel like you are coping amazingly well with everything that you're dealing with right now. But there's just no way to do that long term. So we can definitely work on coping with stressors, but I feel like for you the biggest thing is just figuring out which stressors, even small ones, we can work to eliminate. So I think for our next session, that will be a goal that we talk about more. How does that sound?
Yeah, I think I can at least try to figure out something that I can handle.
Okay, good. Well, it was really nice meeting you and getting to talk to you, and I will see you next week.